Hello, and welcome to Bear Necessities. My name is Bear, and today we are going to be going over Sorcerers. So, Wizards and Warlocks. I'm on a Wizard here, and we'll do essentially what we've done with all the other videos, where we talk a little bit about Sorcerers, some of the things that they have in common, and then we'll go into each class. Luckily, with Summoners and Sorcerers, these last two videos, we'll be able to go kind of back to the old format, or really go over group buffs, some of the mainstay skills, talk a little bit about their damage breakdown, and then also just give some general notes on each class. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about Sorcerers. So honestly, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, so take it with a grain of salt, I honestly think that Sorcerers are some of the best created DPS classes by the EverQuest 2 team. They have just such a healthy balance of DPS, support, debuffs, and a lot of their steroids are very unselfish in the sense that they're also group buffs. So it just, in my opinion, it makes for a really good, well-balanced class. That's honestly, like, if I think of the last two TLEs, I've played Sorcerers both times. Wizard, most of the TLE was starting in like KOS and around there, and played it all the way through TSO, and then I usually swap to Warlock and TSO, but that's usually the class I play. I'm not going to play it this time around, but because I really want to try Fury, but let's go ahead and just talk about the shared skills. So one thing that both Sorcerers have are Translocate, which is an awesome, interesting utility out of combat thing. Travel is not like super easy in Classic. So you get this Translocate spell. It makes this little bubble in front of you. Whenever you press it, you can travel to all of the classic locations, which is really nice. So that is Translocate. Another thing, actually, I don't even have it up on this character. Let me find it. Oh, there it is. Flames of Velius. This is a shared skill both Wizards and Warlocks get. Does heat and cold damage, and then it also slows, which is actually a decent slow. Like, this thing's going to be crawling towards me. As you can see, it's kind of crawling. But it's not a long crawl, so let's go and kill this guy. Alright, so then hate transfers are something that both Wizards and Warlocks get. They're named a little bit differently, but you can see it's a 4% hate transfer, and it says when damaged with a melee weapon, this has a 10% chance to give them 90 power. So this is nice to put on a tank if you're in a group. They get D-hates. Let me pull up. So you get cease, concussive. So you can say you get like a single target, and you get a group D-hate. So it's just decreases your threat. Both Wizards and Warlocks get some sort of something like this. Concussive for sure. And then next, you get this self buff, and so Wizards get Mail of Frost, and Warlocks get Null Mail, but they're essentially buffs that trigger if they fall below 30 health. So for Wizards, it gives you a big ward. So once you fall below 30% health, it wards you for 913 points of damage. Null Mail, I think, like, increases your mit by a lot. So it's something that you kind of keep on all the time, and it's got a 5-minute recast if it triggers. But it's nice for things like AoEs and such. And finally, you get this mana trickle ability. I'm going to mention it. It's not really used a ton, but you can essentially give someone else your or give power for your health. So you can essentially feed like maybe a healer in your group. So it's actually not terrible. But you know, you're using it. It's a 4-second cast, and you're using it instead of doing DPS. So it's not widely used. And that's pretty much it for combinations, or combination skills for sorcerers. So we'll move from that to wizard. All right, so let's go ahead and start like we used to start. Also, to just remind you before we get started with wizard, if you haven't watched the Mage basic videos, make sure you watch it, because it does go over some of the skills that I'm not going to go over, like Magi shielding, see invisibility, stuff like that. But we're going to start with the wizards group buffs. So wizards get group strength and int, and then they also get a group power and mit versus elemental damage. So this is pretty common on all mages. They get this like power plus elemental, some sort of element type resist, and then they also get some sort of buff. The wizards is strength and int, which is nice. And then also the third group buff they get is Roseblade, which is actually really good. 5 times per minute proc, and it's a little dot, just a little tiny dot that does some extra damage. But you don't have a ton of to keep in concentration slots in your group, and most of the time you'll have an int buff already in your group as well, so you can usually take off your int buff and maybe even your power buff depending on your group, and just load up people in your group with Rose Blades. So you can give up to 5 people Rose Blades if you aren't using your group buff, which is nice. Let's talk about some of the mainstay skills, and we will talk about these specific steroids here. These are like the bread and butter. They're 100% procs. So Surge of Row is essentially a proc kind of like Roseblade. It does a little bit more damage, but it's like a little dot that it puts on them, 100%. And then Frigid Gift is pretty insane. It's 6 seconds of procs, and during that you want to try to get as many procs as possible. So like use your low cast time skills, making sure you're getting as many procs as you can on your Frigid Gift. Let's see if I can get, oh wait, last 24 seconds, my bad. I don't know why I said 6 seconds. I was reading the slow last 6 seconds. But I mean, you think about that. That's insane. 100% proc for 24 seconds. Super good. And the proc does quite a bit of damage. I mean, 240 top end. That's pretty good. I mean, and it's a group buff, so you're gonna want to make sure to put like a macro on that, because you want everyone in your group to take advantage of it for sure. And cast all their little small spells and get as many procs as they can. Some other things. Ice Shield is a pretty interesting spell. It can only trigger every 1 to 3 seconds, but it's just like a damage shield. The damage actually does go to you though, so like even if you put this on the tank in the raid, you get the damage. I'm not 100% positive in T5 like where it sits on the damage chart, but I know it's definitely something that you always want to precast on the tank before pull and such, because it does it's just free damage. You put it on the tank before the pull, and you get 3 triggers. You also get a mez. I thought about not even mentioning this because you just never use this. It's called Aurora. It's a mez, but then it roots you. Yeah, you hardly ever use this spell. But if you want to use a mez, you can, or if you need to, you can. And then finally, when it comes to utility, they do have evac, which is really nice. So wizards get group evac and self evac, and they're the only, outside of wardens. So wardens, wizards, and all scouts are the only people who get evacs. Oh, actually, I think SKs also get evac. Yeah. So it's one of the select few people that get evac. And honestly, if you between that and translocate, like, you can travel around pretty quickly on a wizard. All right, let's talk a little bit about the damage spread. So wizards get one dumbfire pet called Protoflame. It does quite a bit of damage. Dumbfire pets in general do a lot of damage. Like, you can see, like, it is wrecking that thing. It just did more damage than Ice Comet. Dumbfire pets in general do a lot of damage. I think that potentially there's a potential that they could get nerfed, just because they're just so good. And there's something with the way that they scale at early levels that just makes them shred. So you really want to keep Protoflame on cooldown because it's just so good. Your other big damage skills, of course, you got Ice Comet. It's like a mainstay skill, does a ton of damage. Ball of Fire is like your bread and butter damage. And then you kind of have all your other filler spells, which are like, you do have Ice Spears, which you kind of want to put on early because it does reduce damage to elemental. And you kind of just want to maintain it. It's a dot. And then you have your big hitters, your Ball of Fire and your Ice Comet, and then you kind of just go down the list from there. You have like 2 dots kind of that you really want to maintain, your Ice Spears and your Incinerate. The third dot, Immolation, it does so much upfront damage. The dot is nice, but like, if you're casting it and overriding the dot, it's okay. And then you have, of course, Magma Chamber, which is pretty damaging as well. It does right under what Ball of Fire does. So that's pretty much like kind of your single target kit. When it comes to AoE, you have Firestorm, which is your only PP AoE, so your only blue AoE. And then you have 2 greens that you would want to use if you have an encounter with a certain amount of mobs. So like, I think like 3+ maybe, you want to use your blues. I don't think you want to use blues on just 2. But I don't know exactly what the numbers are in T5. So that is something else to think about. So you also have this concussive that I talked about. You have a group root, which is Ring of Ice. So you do have some extra green spells as well. The reason I want to bring those up is because in situations where you have Ice Slash up and you're doing an encounter stuff, like, you want to throw these in because they're going to proc your Eye Slash, which is, you want to get as many Eye Slash procs as possible. So that's something to keep in mind. Solar Flare, like, I don't know what reuse is like in T5 when it comes to just general reuse. Generally, Solar Flare is like, if everything else is down, you're going to use it, which is kind of weird because most classes, or most mage classes, you kind of spam your lightning bolt type spell, but not as a wizard or a warlock, honestly, unless like everything else is down. But So yeah, generally, let's just kind of talk through. Generally, with Wizard, you want to precast your damage shield on the tank, get your Ice Spears debuff on, keep your big abilities on cooldown. So that's Proto Flame, Ice Comet, Ball of Fire. Firestorm is really good for big multi encounter. I also want to kind of dispel one thing that, like, especially in T5 and like earlier, like a lot of people say like, oh, like wizards are really good single target, and warlocks are good AoE. And honestly, that's just not super true, especially with multi encounter stuff. Like Firestorm is very good, and warlocks only have one blue AoE as well, so you can pretty much keep up with a warlock on AoE damage early on. But it's nice to also have a warlock in your group as a wizard, because you can take advantage of their steroids as well. Alright, well, that's enough of wizard. Let's swap gears and we'll take a look into warlocks. Alright, here we have a warlock. We're in the same spot here in Lava Storm. I found this as a good spot to just kind of showcase things. But let's start in the same vein. Let's look at the group buffs. So the power group buff of Warlock gives you max power and Nox resist, and then they get Dark Pact, which just increases your casting skills. So they don't get primary stat as part of their buffs, but casting buffs are good, or casting skills. Other spells they have, or group spells they have, is they do have a proc, just like Flame of Roe, except for it's a much longer duration dot. So it's a 16-second dot. It triggers only 2 times per minute as opposed to 5, and it does more damage, but it's over a longer period of time. And then they also get Shroud of Bertoxulus, which is a damage shield. So they can put that on the main tank, and it's 25% chance to damage the target. Let's talk about some of the mainstay skills. So like Wizard had Frigid Gift and Flame of Roe. You get, as a warlock, you get Gift of Bertox and Curse of Darkness, and the Gift of Bertox is just it does encounter damage. So this is something that you're going to see very common. This is also probably why that, you know, people always say warlocks do good AoE damage. They do really good encounter damage. They have a lot of green spells, and both of their steroids do encounter damage. So what does that mean? So if I have 2, say if there's like 2 of these together, right? I don't think there actually is 2 down here together, but we'll just pretend. So say that there's 2 of these. If I have these steroids on and I cast an ability on them, then every time you're going to get those procs, but it'll proc on the entire group. It's not going to proc just on just on your target. And why this is good is because if you do a green ability, then the target is going to trigger on each one of those targets. So it just does a lot of damage. So if you ever look at like Bard parses and stuff like that later on big encounter stuff, like Bards will do a ton of damage because they have so many encounter abilities. And so this is something that you definitely want to macro and say, hey, Curse of Darkness is incoming, and it's 12 seconds of just that encounter proc. So it can really like boost everyone's encounter DPS by really taking advantage of Curse of Darkness. So something else that's really kind of a mainstay skill is Dark Siphoning. So it's just an AoE dot, or a green AoE dot, and the cool thing about it is it actually heals you and everyone in your group but it's also a power drain. So it power drains the mob, and it actually gives you gives everyone in your group power as well. The cool thing about it as well, and here I'll show you real quick. So it died. I still have this buff on me. So even if the mob dies for like however many seconds, however long the duration is, so 36 seconds, you'll continue to gain power for your group. So this ability is super nice. It keeps your group pretty much from running out of power quite often. So really good skill. And I also wanted to mention Aura the Void. This is kind of, I guess, kind of like the doppelganger of Ice Shield. But it says when damaged with the spell, it casts Aura of Pain. So it's 100% proc. So you put something on it, it's going to put a debuff on it. And then every time a spell does damage to it, it's going to proc. And it counts, say it triggers off poison, mental, magic, heat, divine, disease, or cold abilities. So pretty much anytime you cast that, anytime you cast that, it literally just immediately goes off in raid, and you get an immediate trigger. So it's really high. I mean, it's probably like the first thing in your cast order, because it's just immediate damage, and it's really fast cast time. So yeah, that's it for the mainstay skills I really wanted to talk about. So let's just kind of go into the damage breakdown now. So Warlocks have one Dumbfire pet. The Dumbfire pet for Warlock, it's not as good as Wizards. It just doesn't do as much damage. I'm not sure why. Like it just doesn't do like as much initial damage or spell damage or whatever. It does cast an AoE. So as you can see right there, it also hit this Magma Wormling. So it does AoE damage, and it does have a longer cooldown. I will say that. So like, or not a longer cooldown, a longer duration. So essentially, it stays out. I think it's like 45 seconds. Let me check. 36 seconds. So the Dumbfire for Wizard doesn't stay out half as long, but it does more damage in a smaller amount of time. And Dumbfire pets can die and stuff, so that's why the Wizard one is just overall better. Other than that, some other big damage skills I want to talk about is Apocalypse. It's kind of like your Ice Comet. It's your big damage, but it also does, it's an encounter spell, and it does quite a bit of damage over time as well. So when thinking about single target, you have, and I'll just say this right off the bat, I don't know Warlock rotation that much in earlier expansions. I only really know it like TSO on, but you have single target abilities. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait, do I not have? I'm missing one here. I'm missing Distortion. You have about 6 different single target abilities. And then you have 4 green abilities. So you have your Apocalypse. You have Absolution. You have Dark Siphoning, and then also from an AoE standpoint, you have Cataclysm. So you do have a number more of AoE abilities. You still only have 1 blue, but you do have a number of extra greens. So on green encounters, you're definitely gonna be tearing things up. But when it comes to like rotation and such, you do have a number of dots to maintain. Like you have Dark Pyre and Acid, which are dots. And like as you can see, like the Acid dot is the front loaded damage is not too much more than the dot damage. So like this isn't something that you would probably want to overwrite, and I may be wrong on that, but this is something you probably just want to watch the duration on, while Dark Pyre may be okay if you overwrite. And Also, you have to keep in mind that like while Apocalypse is still a green spell, it's one of your heavier damage spells, so you're probably going to use it even in single target scenarios, and even stuff like Dark Siphon you may use in single target scenarios if you want to, you know, give that utility to your group. But other than that, you know, I think Warlocks are great classes even early on. Later on, you don't have to maintain as much. You can be on kind of a priority system because your dots just do so much damage, and so you really prioritize your dots because you get extra ticks from upbeat tempo, and then you also get reduced duration in some of your AAs and stuff. But the only other thing I'll say about that is, you know, you maintain your dots, you follow your priority, and make sure you macro your steroids for your group. Otherwise, that's pretty much Warlock. I want to thank everyone for watching today, and we've got one more video coming up on Summoners. Should be tomorrow, and so once that's out, we'll be done with the class guides. Just to kind of give you a precursor of what's coming after that, I plan on streaming some whenever it's launched, and also continuing to cover you know, specific things about the game. I really want to go more into the systems, like talk a little bit maybe about heroic opportunities, what that is, why they can be good, why they kind of phase out every now and then. Talk about other things like big signature timelines. So I may talk about the Prismatic quest line and things like that. But I do have a lot of content planned for the future. So if you do want to be here for that content, please subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and you'll be notified when new content is available. And if you like this video, please like this video and comment below. All right. And I will see you guys later.